Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Game Developer Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Bryant Francis. We interrupt our episodes recorded at this year's GDC Festival of Gaming for a very important broadcast. TLDR, we got our hands on the Steam controller, the first device to be released from Valve's new hardware lineup, which includes the Steam Machine and the VR device, the Steam Frame. Game Developer isn't usually in the business of covering controllers. In fact, the last time we covered a controller so extensively, it was Valve's original Steam controller when it launched in 2015. That device wasn't a huge success. Turns out you can't just replace joysticks with trackpads and expect people to really like it. But since then, Valve has shipped some VR headsets and the Steam Deck, both of which have driven innovation in the video game hardware marketplace. To help us analyze the new Steam controller, we needed a little help from a journalist more familiar with consumer reviews of video game hardware. That's why we recruited our pal Alessandro Fillari, a regular freelance contributor to Game Developer, to join us for today's episode. Keep listening for our thoughts on the controller and what it could mean for the broader video game marketplace. And Alessandro, welcome to the Game Developer Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to hope for the people watching on YouTube, I'm going to hold up my Steam controller here. Shouldn't have unplugged that. So
I'll hold it up too.
Yeah, Valve was nice enough to send us some controllers to try out in advance. I have been extensively using the Puck, the both wireless charger and sort of acting as a remote signal, as a wireless transceiver for the Steam controller. It's been great for me. It's been like really seamless. What I've been joking to people is like, I'm really glad I'm not actually reviewing it, because my review would just be one line, which is, it works, it's pretty good, and I can play my games. That's why I was, that's one of the reasons I was excited to have you on, Alessandro, is you've had more time to like play with this kind of hardware before and compare and contrast your experience here to other things. How did you find the controller? Like, what did you think of it?
I've been messing around with this for the last week or so. Like, I've been playing a bunch of games. I had my go-to games to play, like when I'm sort of testing out some stuff, like for some hardware. Mostly action games, of course. I agree with you. Like, this is a really just a fantastic piece of hardware. Like, it's such a big improvement over the original Steam controller. I know that one's got a lot of fans, really enjoyed it. But for me, like, this is like sort of the best of everything they've been working towards, like over the last 12 years or so, with hardware. Obviously it's taken a lot of like the successes that they had with Steam Deck as well. That was a really impressive piece of hardware they got, and also some lessons with this Valve Index as well, with the haptic controllers and everything. This is a great piece of hardware. I've just really I had fun doing messing around with games. I felt like I was sort of relearning some aspects of the game because I'm using the trackpad as well, and this just feels fantastic as well. Sometimes I use it on my desktop to sort of as a mouse. I sort of experimented with that a little bit. It feels great. I will say my only complaint, really my big complaint, I guess, is that it does feel like it's very a lot of the face buttons are sort of compressed together. I will say, I found some cases where my thumb was sort of rubbing against the analog stick when I'm pressing against these buttons sometimes. But this is great, and I know it looks really big, but it's not that big. I know some people have been thinking it's sort of like a repeat of the original Xbox controller, the Duke, but it's not. It's actually very light as well. I'm actually surprised how easy it is to sort of hold and everything. But this is good stuff.
Yeah, everything you described lines up with my experience. It's funny that when it comes to how close the face buttons are to the joysticks, it's that's a distance of millimeters, right, or even micrometers or whatever. When they were manufacturing this thing and figuring that out, that extra fighting for every inch of space on a piece of plastic, where even like putting one thing slightly in the wrong place could make the experience so much more unpleasant. Like, it's pretty impressive what they've pulled off just on that alone. Like you said, a huge step ahead from the original. What did you not like about the original Steam controller, I guess? Which is funny because Danielle Riendeau, our editor-in-chief, still uses one. So I'm curious
Really?
why you aren't a fan.
I think just really, I'm just not really too into using trackpads for controllers. Like, I will say this is the best iteration they've had, like at that attempt, like, trying to make a dedicated controller. But with that, it has trackpads. But like the original one, we were joking about it before we started this call, but like it felt like a very gimmicky sort of like controller that was trying to figure out, like, those back in the 90s or early 2000s when they were trying to figure out the best type of controller for 3D games and all that. I don't know, it kind of just gave me flashbacks to when I was trying to play like PC games on like a laptop in the 2000s, when you have like the trackpad and you're trying to figure out how to sort of like find the sort of like the most comfortable, like, sort of way to play. But yeah, I mean, for me, just I like having the touch of like buttons and everything, like and having the analog sticks and everything. I call me traditional, I guess, but it works. I like it. But at the same time, I will say, like, I was using the trackpads a lot more, like, comfortably this time around. Mostly just to do like slight camera adjustments on the right, sort of the right control pad, like right here. It's yeah, I mean, like, I was playing Devil May Cry 5, and that's like one of my go-to action games, like just chill out and all that. And I found myself just like sort of just sort of, instead of using like the right analog stick, just going to the trackpad instead, just like doing the quick swipe so I can adjust the camera and everything. And it felt pretty great, honestly. Like the haptic, the feedback there was like pretty solid too. And also, I played Balatro, which apparently was the recommended game to try with this controller, and it does feel pretty good.
Yeah, I'll get into the games that I tested out in a second, but like the original Steam controller, I had one, I appreciated it. The coolest place I ever saw it used was I visited the offices of the Boston Globe once, and there was an office at the Globe at the time that was like sort of dedicated to, filing FOIA requests for documents. And I was talking with one of the people who worked in there, and he was just casually navigating around their computer and showing us stuff with a Steam VR controller, and like showing us, like spreadsheets and things, and just like using it to like kind of like so that they could have this big monitor and doing stuff. And the trackpad stuff felt way more natural, like essentially having a portable trackpad felt great for non-video game things. And then for video games, it really felt like Valve or the people behind the controller had convinced themselves that the way they designed those trackpads would feel as good and be as functional as joysticks, and they were wrong. I'll just say it, they were wrong.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, like I think definitely it took like 10 years for them, Valve, to sort of figure out like the best way. And I think a lot of credit goes to the Steam Deck as well. I was pointing to my Steam Deck over here, but I have charging over there. They've done it's very clear they're taking a lot of learnings from like the last 12 years or so of like sort of this venture into hardware on their end. Again, the Valve Index as well, I think deserves some, praise there as well with the haptic senses and everything too. So, which I get a sense of here. Like, did you actually mess around with any of the back controllers?
Oh yeah, I did. I was going to get to those because those are really interesting. Those are really interesting in how they intersect with those two devices, but please continue.
Yeah, no, this device is just really, there's so much going on with this device, not just like the haptic sensors, but also the gyro capabilities as well. I didn't like mess around with it as much as I wanted to, but mostly because I'm just mostly sticking with like more traditional sort of like games and all that. But yeah, no, I mean, like it just feels really comfortable. Like, I'm just really impressed with like the feel of it and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's very seamless and like, because obviously it's Valve's like dedicated hardware and everything. Just like how easy it is to pop into the big picture mode for Steam and everything. Like, yeah, I mean, it really feels like sort of in a lot of ways like the missing piece they needed, like, to have like that sort of Valve, like SteamOS, very dedicated experience and everything. So they have their dedicated controller now. So
yeah, especially with the Steam machine on the horizon, like making sure there is just something that works really well with the OS for day one, can handle everything, that the Steam Deck currently delivers, and then more is pretty important. Yeah, speaking of those back controller buttons, which once again for the YouTube audience, I'll hold it up here just to compare. We've got, like our 4 buttons right here, and there's like a decent hardware difference actually between those and what's on the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck has these big paddles, and they're not unpleasant to use, but I don't when I'm looking around for like community, if I'm playing a game where like I'm using a community layout or something as opposed to just like a normal, like game controller, face buttons, triggers, bumpers, like if I'm looking for a game that benefits from one of those, like those paddles really don't get a lot of screen time. But I was using this controller and like fishing for every opportunity I could to use those back ones, because clicking them it felt good, but not only felt good, but it felt good in a way that like it felt like it could. My muscle memory was drifting towards picking it up a lot more, so it was interesting to compare that with the very similar things on Steam Deck. Which, by the way, like one of the reasons I was able to test these kind of controller configurations is that because Steam Deck configurations just work on Steam controller, right? Like I could open up all these games where I rely on these for and just start testing things that I'd previously been doing on the deck with the controller. And this was helpful for the keyboard and mouse first games I was doing a lot of testing on. But yeah, you were talking about the VR controller similarities. Like, could you spell those out for me a little more?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, like, the thing with the Valve Index, like the controllers, like, obviously it's really sophisticated motion sensing and everything. And the gyro capabilities in particular as well. But also it's just really customizable in terms of like, what you can do with the buttons and everything. Like, and, they've applied some of that here with the, the sort of the, obviously the back buttons as well, but just also how the sensitivity for like, the triggers and everything, but also the feedback you get from using the trackpads and everything. Like, you get that sort of the haptic sense was what I was getting at from there. But
yeah, the gyro is really interesting. I tested one single player first person shooter with it. Actually, no, that's not true. I tested a couple, and the custom controller mappings I used it in slightly different ways. I was really trying to figure out if I felt like, because the classic, like, what's the difference between mouse and keyboard and a controller is like one of the big ones is, mouse and keyboard means you can aim more precisely and you don't need aim assist or other functions, on PC games that you might need on a console game, because consoles can only use controllers. I couldn't figure out if playing these shooters with the gyro, if this brought controllers and mouse and keyboard closer together or not. But that's just because I think I would need a lot more time with the gyro to understand that. Did you, as you tested the games you tested and were messing around with the gyro, did you get a sense for like if it could close that gap, or is this almost like a third control space that sits in between the two and doesn't really like stand out, I guess?
I definitely think it's still fairly niche, like when it comes to like, the audiences, but I do think this controller is making the case for sort of pushing us forward to the, sort of fill that gap a bit more. There are plenty of players that love gyro, like, controls, like Splatoon players are pretty like, like high level Splatoon players really love the gyro, sort of like capabilities.
I did not know that, honestly.
Yeah, no. Like there's some really ruthless high level players that are exclusively gyro. Like, it's kind of devious to see them play, but yeah, no, like this, I think, to your point, I think this controller does like, it's offering more like a support for that, for players who want to have that experience, especially with, with how customizable it is. Like, you can actually mess around the settings and adjust like, sort of the pitch and all that. Like, I was messing around with that, but also, one thing that I didn't get to see, but I did notice in like previous coverage from other outlets and all that, was that there are community options for different control like setups that you can sort of examine and look at.
Like I mentioned, the ones that are out there for Steam Deck already work for this controller.
Right. Yeah. I wasn't able to find that with like, was looking around for this one, but yeah, I was really impressed. I feel like I'm reiterating important here, but it is very customizable. It's very user friendly in terms of like, giving you options and everything, like, how you want to, best play your games and specific games as well. So, there's so many different like control schemes out there. So.
Yeah, the fact that, it's remappable to each game, that's like, look, it's not new because we've already seen that with, going to keep seeing it with the Steam Deck here, but like it means you can quickly, you aren't having to do a full readjustment on the fly every time. Let's talk about the games that we tested this with. I'm going to read out the ones I was trying out just for the folks at home have some transparency. I was trying, the game that I actually had the most fun kind of messing around with was a game called colony sim survival game called Dark Switch from Cyber Temple. This game is very niche. It is very like, I happened to see it on Steam and was like, wait, Frostpunk but with fantasy and elves, I'll give it a shot. And it was a case where this is something I've enjoyed doing on the Steam Deck too. Sometimes when a game has zero controller support, zero, like, not really effective community, like gamepad lineups, I will still, if the game is interesting enough, muscle through using the Steam Deck and the trackpads and such especially for like games I can pause and like then slowly pick and move things around. I did this with News Tower. So Dark Switch, even though it was like not something I could not like, make the perfect experience for with this controller, it still worked pretty well. I'll also just rattle off some other ones I tried. Let's see. Brace Yourself Games Phantom Brigade worked really well with it using a controller, a community version. That was interesting because what someone made for the Steam Deck, they made it easy to switch between layers so that if you needed the controls to go one way for one part of the game and another way for another, you could just push a button and you would be switching between those. The games that didn't work well, the thing I was really trying to push with my tests were like PC, like mouse friendly games that have been, they can't ship on console, right? Because like they just don't work with regular gamepads. Like, how do they feel with this kind of hybrid? We've got, oh goodness, who developed this game? Arkan Games, Heart of the Machine. We've got Shiraki? Minakata Dynamics, Whiskerwood. I did try these games out, and it just wasn't clicking. So that's kind of a case where I feel like I would hope developers put their own effort into at least, like, if not creating like their own recommended controller settings, to at least like elevating the community ones they think are important. Like, it wasn't working really well right off the bat for those kinds of games, even though, like I said, Dark Switch I was able to hack it together pretty well with. What else did you try it on besides Devil May Cry?
Yeah, so also aside from Balatro as well, like I had played like 2 hours of that. But I did check out Mouse PI for Hire. That was the very recent FPS game that just came out. Very much in the style of like Steamboat Willie and like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's a pretty classic like style, like a shooter FPS game, like in the vein of like a Doom and Quake, like those very 90s like early 2000s era like FPS games. Yeah, I mean the Steam controller felt pretty awesome, like with that, like it's across like every, it's already like on it's PS5 and all that, so it's pretty well tuned for a controller as well. So, but I just felt like really comfortable, sort of like doing like the motions and everything, like felt pretty smooth, like playing that. Other than that, I did a replay of Streets of Rage 4, which is a really awesome action game, sort of revival of the series that came out like 6 years ago. It's a pretty stellar beat 'em up, and I wanted to play like a sort of like just a straight 2D action game just to see how it feels, because those tend to be very precise. Those are so precise compared to like a lot of other sort of 3D action games that are out there. Like it's very like sort of simple and straight, and like it just felt like having something like that to play would be really cool. And I will say, like I'm a little picky with like how the D-pad is. Like sometimes I want some like something that's not so like I guess maybe like something a little like easier to touch, like with my thumb. Like sometimes I feel like the rubbing sensation like starts getting to me, chafing a little bit. But generally, like I had a good experience with that. Like just playing that, and yeah, and along with that, I played Absalom as well, the same the co-developers of Streets of Rage 4 went on to make Absalom, which came out last year, and that was great too. That's a pretty great action beat 'em up game. It's a roguelite beat 'em up game. So very much in the vein of like Dragon's Crown or Capcom's Dungeons and Dragons game, which are like sort of low key the best like beat 'em ups to come out there. So yeah, no, had good times just sort of basically experimenting with like getting reacquainted with like a lot of older games that just coming back to and everything. So
yeah, I also tried out on the shooter side. I also tried it out with Celico and a Celico from. Oh man, I'm doing a bad job of remembering dev names today, guys. That's from Altered Orbit Studios. And then the other like kind of wild one I tried it out with is a game called Beyond Citadel from Dokura Mori, which is a very like sort of very niche, a bit of Doom, a bit of other shooters from the 90s and 2000s inspired game. That's one where I really messed with the gyro on it and trying it, but it was also cool to see that these games still, like the classic control schemes were there. They still worked pretty well, for the existing controller support. Beyond Citadel is the one where before I couldn't get it working on Steam Deck actually when I first tried it out, and to have it work with the controller now was pretty rewarding. Moving on from the kinds of games we were testing, this is one where I really want to pick your brain, Alessandro, about like the reason for these kind of controllers to be on the market. The the controllers, just like with a lot of third-party peripherals, like it's a pretty huge market. The total gamepad, the total market value for third-party gamepads, as in those not provided by Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony for their consoles, is extremely high. But I'm a person who, I have the controllers that come with my consoles. I acquired a controller because some games on PC needed a controller, so I was like, all right, cool. Maybe if I need to, I get another controller from the first party, and I don't go for third-party controllers. In your experience, why have you ever preferred a third-party controller over something first-party? And otherwise, like, why do you think people seek out these controllers and not just stick with what comes, out of the box?
For me personally, I do tend to like stick with like the what's available to me in the box, like I don't know, like I tend to like just to keep it simple, really. Like I'd stick with like the PS5 DualSense controller, like and if I need to replace them, I'll get another like traditional like Steam PS5 DualSense controller instead of going third party, because I like I just like the comfort, like the feel of it, like but that said, like for PC, obviously, like there is no singular like thing, like it's all it's always so open to like it's very third party driven, like when it comes to like controllers for PC. For before I had this one, I was using actually I have it right here. I was using this Razer controller, like right here, which I've had for like 5 years. Been using that. It still works. It's fine. And I'm sure like right now, like actually I will say before that, I think the one controller like that was unofficially sort of like the go-to for PC games was the plug-in 360 controller for like the longest time. And I've been to events. There are still devs using that controller. Like it still works. It's simple. Like but yeah. I mean, just in terms of like for what my needs are, like I just like to. I'm not really someone who like messes around with like having like the different switches to sort of modify like how the depth of like trigger presses and everything. Like I know that's important for some folks, but for me, I just like to have something that feels good. The buttons feel good. The D-pad works and everything. But at the same time, like we're at a point where people want that level of customization. They want to have those options and everything. And I will say, like I've had some good experiences with Razer as well. Like the controller that showed you right now. But I mean I think the Steam controller 2 right here is like a pretty awesome upgrade, like for sure, like because it is offering options, but at the same time, if you want to just keep it simple, like just you can have that too. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Like
It does, yeah. It's definitely the there's a reason like Microsoft and PlayStation sell they're pro controllers now that get first party support, and there's definitely understanding that it is not a mainstream segment of the market, right? Like they're definitely making this for like a more niche crowd, and therefore they can charge like a bigger buck for it. But they're not only customization, but like being able to like have greater control over the feel of a device. Valve also made this possible with the Steam Deck. You can pop it open and replace different components with ones that better fit your hand or whatever. It's certainly growing. Like for instance, speaking of growing, if I pull up an older story on Game Developer, what I know for sure is that the number of players using controllers on Steam with games on Steam has been increasing steadily over the years. Let's see if we go back to this story from written by Justin Carter. Daily average controller use on Steam has tripled since 2018, and that story is from 2024. And at the time, let's see. Yeah. So the total usage at that point jumped from 5% to 15%. 59% were using Xbox gamepads, 26% were using PlayStation controllers. And at the time, Valve ranked people using the Steam Deck as controller support. So there's definitely data showing this is a growing segment, even if you just focus on the PC market angle and not the Steam machine angle, which is not so much the elephant in the room, but it is definitely the thing you and I don't know about yet is how well this thing interacts with a Steam machine, because we only received the controller. So we're still sort of testing this on the hardware we have.
For sure. Yeah, and it's really interesting just to hear that, because I think it does make sense when you look at like the amount of younger audiences, younger gamers out there, coming into games. Like they're more younger PC gamers especially, and I think growing up they're more comfortable controllers, and and I think maybe for some folks it can be a bit daunting to play like a PC game with like a full keyboard laid out and a mouse and everything, because I think it would be fair to say our experience, because we're millennials, our experience, we got into desktop gaming I think pretty early, and I think everyone's relationship, I mean a lot of younger generations are probably stuck with control, maybe consoles or iPads or something a bit simpler and everything. So yeah, I mean that definitely tracks that controller usage is becoming a lot more common with a PC game. So
yeah, what I hope sort of pops out of this is that if these controllers proliferate, and if other controllers sort of start following, whether it's for the Steam machine or regular PCs, if other controllers sort of follow Valve down the road, with the back buttons, with high functioning gyro, that expanded support for that kind of right now we call it Steam Deck support, right, for its trackpads, back pedals, and it's often a lot of community setups that fill the gap when developers sort of don't natively make a complex game work for those. I hope that expanding the number of devices people own that support that opens up new doors for developers to push the boundaries with control schemes. Right now you slowly have a controller friendly audience that wants complexity and can handle complexity. Like you said, younger players being very touchscreen first is going to mean you don't want to go too far in that direction, right? I was just talking to the folks at EgoSoft about how their game is really complex. It has complex controller, it's very mouse and keyboard, does not map super well to just a gamepad, and that's created some problems for them for attracting new players, younger players. But that it definitely my experience with this controller was so positive that I truly want devs to support complexity here and not just sort of going for most common denominator. And to be clear, I understand the value of most common denominator, right? Look, we gotta feed our cats, we gotta feed our dogs.
For sure. No, you're correct there. Yeah.
Talking about some other things around the Steam controller. We don't know any of the official pricing for this yet, But
No,
we
I
do
didn't see
know.
anything there. Yeah, fortunately not.
No, but also do know that the pricing will be impacted by the increase of hardware, the current generative AI driven increasing costs of memory, hardware components that is creating shortages around the world. What would you say when you're considering, like, okay, maybe I'm going to pay money for a controller? What price do you in your own head do you want to pay when you're making that kind of purchase?
It's such a tough question for me because
Yeah, because in theory it's free, right? Like that's the actual answer. Is
I mean, ideally that'd be great because like when you get like a console, like the controller is there and everything. So like having to go out and buy the new controller, like is always like is always in some ways like when you have to replace a controller or anything on console, it does feel like a bit of a hassle. Like, but this, I think, in a lot of ways, it does improve. It is probably the best. It is the best iteration of like a Valve controller that they've ever made. I feel like it'd be fair to say that. And in a lot of ways, like it is improving everything they did with the Steam Deck as well. But as you said, like these controllers are a lot harder to come by, like hard pieces of hardware and everything, and we're definitely going to see something reflected with the pricing, whatever that is. Unfortunately, I really wish we could figure that out.
Yeah,
I don't know if I. Oh, sorry.
Well, I will first and foremost stress that neither you or I were given a number for this.
No.
If you looked at this controller and then closed your eyes and pictured it like looking at the Steam page or looking at if it makes its way to store shelves, what do you sort of imagine the price tag there being? Like literally, it doesn't have to be an informed opinion. Like what number would you see there and not make you go, oh hell no? Like what number would you see that would make you think, yes, I would actually buy that?
I would feel okay if this was like maybe 125 or 150.
Oh shit, that's way higher than I was gonna go. I was sitting here like, and once again, I don't know, I'll say it for the third time, just to, is we have no intel, but I was sitting here thinking, looking at this and going, man, if this was $85, I would look at it as like a super nice toy.
Even without the tariff, I think this would be like, it would be a little higher than that. I think this is like easy 100 at least, at the very, like that's being generous or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I would feel okay like with around the 150 range because I know like the premium Xbox controllers could be a bit pricey, like for Xbox Series X and all that. The Elite controllers, I believe.
Yes, the Xbox Elite controller currently goes for. It would be nice if. Oh right, I turned off all the Google Shopping things because I didn't want that anymore. Speaking of wanting control over your own experience, the Elite Xbox controller, which has gone up in price, it retails for $200, $199.99, but it's currently on sale. Fun fact: as we record, it's on sale. The Xbox Elite Wireless Controller Series 2, which is, I guess, is a roughly comparable device, although it uses paddles again and not buttons on the back. Right. Currently on sale for $157.95. So that we're definitely, I'm following your agreement here that we're looking at like 150 at the minimum.
Yeah, of course. I would not be surprised. I mean, and again, I know nothing about the price. Like, this is just a wild guess.
I think we're just repeating that because we don't want anyone to get mad at us when we're wrong.
I'm just going to throw out a number, probably 225. Yeah. I mean, like,
it's on the way to a new console.
Yeah. It's unfortunately this is reality right now, like where we're at, like with everything. Like, it's a lot harder to get a Steam Deck these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because they kind of we already like there's already an OLED shortage and such. Yeah, I already like blanch when like a new PlayStation controller costs like $80, right? Like I got a second one so I could play It Takes Two with my spouse, and I was not happy to make that purchase. I felt like I had done something wrong, like I needed to wait for a Black Friday sale. Like in terms of a very like I have what I need to play the game, making that a kind of extra purchase and like justifying in my mind feels tricky, but so it's going to be interesting. Valve is definitely like our my colleagues over at Omdia, which is a data organization, a research analyst firm, also under Informa. They are very they're sort of like cynical when it comes to the Steam machine and Valve, and Dom, George, and the rest. James, I love you guys. Just they're very like of the opinion that the Steam machine and Valve's hardware presence is not like opening up a new segment, as opposed to just like their argument is that it essentially monetizes existing Steam players. And that said, I do agree. For instance, they tossed me some data over before I went live. They appear to be estimating about 40,000 units are being prepared to hit the market, which is not a lot, and especially if you consider that these, when they launch, will be primarily for existing PC players. That's not a heavy segment of the market, but yeah, once the Steam machine hits, who knows if that'll change things.
For sure, yeah. Unfortunately, we're at a point where getting an extra controller is either like a necessity because you need to replace one, or it's like, oh, I just need an extra one. It's like it's a luxury. You don't really need. I mean, within comparison to the video game, like experience and everything, it is like an additional thing. Like I do. Yes, I mean, I do have those concerns as well. Like in terms of like, is this something that a lot of PC gamers should run out to get right now? I don't know. It depends on the price, really. Like,
yeah. Which then folds back to, right, like how much as a developer should our audience like actually be planning to support for these? And it's like, well, it's going to be like your niche hardcore player, your most passionate players, maybe if you're in the right genre, will pick this up and start experimenting with it. But is that going to justify the time and money to put more effort in? It's definitely not looking like that right now, but boy, will you make players like me happy if you do, is would be my argument for our listeners.
For sure.
I will just poke at my other interesting stuff. Yeah, if we're looking, let's briefly, I think I'll mention the things that I've really loved about the Steam controller. This puck, the whole puck thing, holding it back up to the camera for the video crowd. This thing is ingenious. When I spoke to Valve before, they were sort of talking about and that's all. Ooh, that satisfying click.
Yeah, noise. No. Did you try the ping option, by the way, in the settings? It's actually pretty
cool. What's the ping option?
So if you need to find your controller, you can just go in the Steam settings on your hardware piece, like desktop or whatever, and you can it'll put out a noise, like basically like, hey, like a finder, like like a find your phone, or like
find your phone, yeah,
or find your controller. It's pretty satisfying.
I think like the reason I didn't think to look for that, even though in a proper full hardware testing environment I would have or should have, is my controller sits right by my desk and it doesn't go anywhere else. So like I don't think to lose it. Yeah, when I spoke to Valve before, what they said was Steve Cardinale told us. He's one of the engineers working on it. Is that Bluetooth, is a wireless connection we all rely on, but in a lot of people's homes, there are things that may cause a Bluetooth signal to be interrupted, and the puck works around that by being on a different frequency. Although didn't quite, I'm sure an engineer could explain it to me better, but they sort of just said it quote addresses these issues. And he did also note that a reason that the puck sits at the end of a longer USB-C cable instead of just going right into your desktop is wireless receivers plugged right into your desktop will be maybe subject to electrical interference from all the other cables around them. So that is just a smart bit of design. I think the real reason I quickly brought up this interview real quick was that Valve kind of has two interesting philosophies going with its hardware, right? The one is that they have, it's yours and you should be able to modify it however you want, right? Like a Steam Deck can be basic Steam Deck, or I may or may not know or have crossed paths with people who turn it basically into piracy machines, right? Like they'll put emulators on there. They will be playing old classic games on there. And I sort of look at it and I go like, yep, Valve won't get mad at you for doing that, right? But their other philosophy is they mentioned this talk about the controller is they want that like it just works experience, right? Like they want you to plug it in and just works. And it's interesting that those are two interesting dynamics to balance, because in the regular hardware world, I would say those are usually represented by Linux OS systems, which are very, yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. And boy, is it hard. And then you have Apple's operating system, which is very, it just works. But then you can't modify anything, and you can't modify anything. You're locked into their app store, as Tim Sweeney has ranted and raved about. But it does provide that more satisfying, like open the box and it just works thing. I guess, Alessandro, for you, like when you're thinking about these things, we all want, some combination of those two things. But where do you, as a person who might be the target audience for this controller, do you value more that like ability to take full control over it, or do you sort of value that like I want this complex thing out of the box to work and feel like magic? Like, I guess which one of those two do you drift towards?
I definitely drift towards the latter, like just like having like that ability to just pull it out of the box and just have it work. Just like be able to again, like I appreciate like the options, like of being like not just this controller but other controllers as well, like just being able to customize it and tune it how you want. But for my needs mostly, I just want it to feel good. I just want it to feel like, all right, I feel okay with holding this for several hours or like over the course of like the next 2-3 years or whatever, and have that work and not have to think about like, all right, does this need to be updated? Is there like a little like knob that's not working correctly or anything like I mean, for me, like I just like having that experience of just being able to like have the controller, being able to connect to the game correctly, everything's fine. So that's why I usually, even when I'm playing on PC games, I'm always like hardwired, because I've run into issues with like the Bluetooth and everything, and I do appreciate the puck here. Like it's actually been pretty nice, like because this is your connector too, like you can play wirelessly and everything, but it'll cut down that interferences, so that's very valuable, like for me as well.
Yeah, I honestly, anytime I have to hook a Bluetooth up to anything, like that little bit of friction and like, oh, I could just like use something that's already attached, or I could hook up a new Bluetooth thing, like I just feel like that adds like time between the getting to do the thing I want to do and actually doing it, because I don't, sometimes you gotta input numbers, or you gotta do this, so you gotta or you gotta make sure it's not connected to something else. It's like can be tricky. So man, the puck is just magic. Like we are a puck stand. We stand the puck, and not just Shakespeare's puck. We stand the puck here.
We're in the post-puck era now of PC gaming. So
God, I truly I hope like this is kind of a like Valve is kind of an interesting position where like between the Steam Deck and this controller, the Steam Deck is not becoming a household console the way like the Nintendo Switch is. It's, like Omdia's analysis suggests that it's making extra money off existing Steam accounts. The controller may be the same, but I definitely think I could see here's a prediction, is that as Valve like marches on with the controller and the Steam machine, some of the configurations, best practices, like hardware stuff they're making is going to be stuff that at least other third-party manufacturers chase. Like, I am very confident that we're going to see more pucks or puck-style devices, like Steam sort of being able to kick down the door with their own R&D segment, like a company, this multi-million-dollar company that runs relatively lean and can spend a long time in R&D because it's core, its most profitable business, the store, keeps the lights on. There's something valuable about the way they're doing it, and we sort of already have one indicator that this might be a trend that we see its hardware do. Some of the data from Omdia that we got shows that the third-party docking station market is one area of growth if you're looking at the peripherals market, and that's not just because of the Steam Deck. It's because there's now a bunch of devices, portable, PC devices, where docks are becoming more important, right? And it's not like Nintendo didn't drive the adoption of docks, right? Or there were, there were some third-party docks for Nintendo, but sometimes they broke your third-party docks for the Nintendo Switch, but sometimes they broke your Switch. So going with the base one was important. But frankly, I think when it comes to the Steam Deck, third-party docks may be better. The dock that Valve sells is actually one of the least reliable ones I found, which is a little sad. A little bit of ding on Valve there. But yeah, I think there's a possibility where the more Valve keeps iterating on these, like they actually sort of like, just to repeat myself from before, like we're looking at some tech that might be the foundation of other small technology advances for games in the years ahead. And that's just kind of neat.
No, for sure. Yeah. I think there's certainly room, like, even though I've been harping on just like being traditional, like, having what's available and all that. I definitely think there's still room for third parties to sort of step in and try to improve, make some slight improvements and everything, like, out there. But I'm very interested in seeing like what's going to be out there, like, within this sort of puck era that we're coming into.
We're entering the puck era.
Entering the puck era. Yeah.
That's the name. That'll be the name of the episode.
There you go. Real quick. I did find the option for the ping. If you want to hear it,
let's roll it. It'll be coming in faint for audio listeners, but I got it. It's like a phone ringing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. One last question, Alessandro, I think, to take it away today. I was playing the controller. I was using the controller, and I mentioned before that these back buttons are so interesting that, like, I was like, I want to play a game where a developer actively, like, uses the grip, not just uses these as buttons and inputs, but, like, takes advantage of, like, how it feels to grip them. It reminds me of what it feels like for when you have a good VR controller, like PSVR 2, some of the better Quest controllers, like, right? Like, obviously they were all sort of trying to get to, like, where fingers, a lot of VR devs are trying to get to where fingers and hands are doing things more naturally. But just like the gripping sensation of it, like something where, like, you're playing a game and powering up your character involves, like, pressing one or both in a specific timing sequence. Like, it's one of those ones where I'm like, man, if the PS5 had, if the PS5 controllers natively had that, developers might want to experiment with this. This is obviously a niche controller. You can't build a whole game around, like back paddles and back buttons for one kind of controller. But it felt so good that I wish developers would try it. As you were using it, is there anything else about it that you, in your wish casting of the future, as you're using the controller, is there anything where you go, man, I hope a developer tries to take advantage of this when it comes to using the Steam controller? Anything in there?
I would like to see more PC games use the gyro, like, sort of motion sensing, because, like, I mean, that's something I like with the PS5, like, just being able to have that option where I can just sort of, like, move, like in Death Stranding, just be able to move things around, like, up and down, like hold the baby and, like, give them like a hug and everything, like, and all that. I think that's something really cool, but I'm actually right there with you with these buttons. I think there's so much potential here. Like, I'm thinking of not just like games like Crimson Desert, which uses every single button on the controller and the combinations, everything, where you have to hold like three different things at once, like three or four different buttons at once, just to do like a simple move. You can just, obviously set that to like the hotkey right here or whatever. But I'm thinking of games like role-playing games like Baldur's Gate or whatever, like, like that type of experience where you can have that more comfortable sort of experience, like, on PC, like, just like have those, like, set those hotkeys and, like, put, really customize it and tune it the way you want. So I think that's something that's going to be really valuable for a lot of people. But
yeah. I do think if you're a developer and your audience is on PC, like, sort of having someone on your team, even if, like, for an existing game, like, sitting down and trying to figure out, like, how you can show your players how to do cool things with it. I almost feel like it's going to be a marketing beat in the future. Like, here's how our game plays using the Steam controller when you're targeting, talking to that audience. Because right now, like, oh, our game is Steam Deck verified is a marketing beat the developers will do. Steam machine verified requirements. Valve mentioned to us that those will be lighter than what's on Steam Deck. That's also another one where, that's a marketing beat people will have advantage to, right? As our game is Steam machine verified, our game is Steam Deck verified. Being able to do things with your, like, show off how your game can take advantage of the controller. Definitely something, I would say from this experience, definitely something you can look forward to using to promote your game.
For sure, yeah. And yeah, like the Steam Deck Verified is such a huge thing for a lot of games now. Like a lot of gamers, really are like, all right, does this run okay on Steam Deck and all that? But I can see for in the future, it's like Steam controller tuned, tuned for Steam controller 2 and all that. So I think that's something that could be there for and the Steam machine as well. I think we're entering that point where Valve is gonna have that more complete, I guess we can say, sort of experience where you can have the Steam machine and the dedicated controller as well. So be interesting to see how it turns out for sure.
Yeah. Alessandro, kind of closing out today, what is the next game you think you are going to use this controller to play? What is the next game you were going to play using this controller?
That's a good question. I have been playing. I can say this now. I've been playing a bit of Diablo 4, the Lords of Hatred expansion that's coming out. Unfortunately, I played a bit of Diablo 4 with controller, on other platforms and everything. I want to try to do that on PC more because I mostly play on PC. But I would love to give this a go on the controller. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to this time around because it's on Battle.net sort of account, and it's very difficult having to sort of sync them together. So that's why I'm going to wait until the full expansion comes out so I can play that and play it again with the controller this time around. So yeah, it'd be really exciting to give that a go.
Yeah, I will hopefully be trying it out. There's a game from a company called Above the Desk called Above the Snow. That's wild. I've never seen a game name and studio name be so tight. But this is a game where you run a alpine resort. And like I said, I've been really enjoying being able to play. I love the fact that, I will muscle my way through playing these kind of games on a Steam Deck. This game was not meant to be played on a Steam Deck. But I am a person who I have some... thankfully not drastic, but I will have some issues if I play a game using keyboard and mouse for too long, especially a simulation game where I'm doing lots of clicking and maybe shorter movements as opposed to a shooter where it's bigger. So that hurts, and that can hurt, I should say. And this controller is already proven really comfortable for me. So I look forward to trying more simulation games, top down, city management things. This is what I'm looking forward to using the controller for. So that's for me.
For sure. That sounds great.
Well, yeah. Well, Alessandro, thank you once again for joining us on the Game Developer Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks once again to Alessandro for joining us on this week's show. Check out his website if you want to follow his work across the many wonderful video game publications he writes for. For more from us at Game Developer, be sure to visit www.gamedeveloper.com, follow us on major social platforms, and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Blue Sky at brianfrancis.me. Today's episode was edited by Pierre Landreau, and our theme music is by Mike Meehan. And a reminder, Game Developer and GDC Festival of Gaming are sibling organizations under Informa Festivals. Thank you for listening. And hey, for those of you making PC games, let us know if you're planning to try anything interesting with Steam controller configurations. Shoot me an email at bryant.francis@gamedeveloper.com. That's Bryant, BRYANT, .francis, FRANCIS, @gamedeveloper.com. Thank you.